Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Amber White, and you all know me as the Director for Pre-Law and Legal Studies here at the University of Texas at Arlington. I am excited to bring to you all today a really cool panel that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And this is a Ladies Tell All panel, law school edition, where we will explore what it means to be a law student at each stage of the game. So we're not just talking about law school generally, we're diving deep into what it means to be a 1L, what it means to be a 2L, what it means to be a 3L, and what it means to officially go off, graduate, and have that first new graduate experience. But let me introduce our speakers here really quickly. Our first wonderful speaker goes to the Loyola University Chicago School of Law and is a 1L. Her name is Nida Shah Garcia, and she'll be sharing with us her 1L experience. Next, we will have Esther Oni, and she is a 2L at the South Texas College of Law in Houston. She will be joining us via video recording today because she did have a last minute event that came up, and it was more important that I said it was more important for her to be there than here, but she may try and join us for the Q&A session. We have Ms. Haley Moore, who is joining us from the University of Oklahoma School of Law as a 3L. And then lastly, we have Ms. Eliza Sharania. I hope I said your name correctly. She's joining us as a recent graduate of the Cornell School of Law. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here with us today. I'm so grateful that you guys gave your time this afternoon, and I'm really looking forward to what you all have to share. So first, we will start with Nida, and I'm going to go ahead and give her the floor to introduce herself formally, share a little bit of her background. And I don't think I mentioned this, but these ladies are UTA alumni, so they can give you a good picture of what it was like to be a UTA student and then go on to law school from there and kind of take those experiences with them. So Nida, please share with us your experience.
Hi, so before I get into that, Mrs. White, is it just like the participants that I'm seeing is four, but I just want to confirm that, like, is it just a seminar view or is it just that recording?
I've just put it on your view just now, so we can just see you.
Okay, all right, sounds perfect. Hi, everybody, I'm Nida. I graduated from UTA in 2021, so just a year ago. Well, not even a year, like a few months ago. I was a philosophy and criminal justice major. Right after graduation, I went to, I applied to Loyola and got accepted, and I'm starting law school. So I just finished my first semester. I'm going into the second semester now, and it's been good so far. Yeah, so just a little bit about 1L. The first week of law school was really tough for me. It was the worst. But after that, it's been good. Like, honestly, I can't complain. Just because, going into law school, I had no idea like how to balance like my schedule, my time, my tasks, all that stuff. So that's why the first week was just a little different, getting used to that whole jazz. But after that, it got easier. I set up my schedule, my tasks, what I need to prioritize. And it's been good so far. I finished my finals, and right after that I applied to internships, and I'm starting the second semester. It's been a month now, and it's been good. It's been good. It's not, law school is not a monster that people make it out to be. So it's been good so far. That's like my general introduction on what I am, my 1L career so far.
Yeah. So you are in Chicago, and you did grow up here in the Arlington area. So tell us what it was like to leave home and go so far away.
So I'm kind of used to just not being in one place. So I immigrated from Pakistan about 6, 7 years ago and finished high school here. And then I went to Austin for a year, um, came to UTA and, been there for like 3 or 4 years. And so going in, like just transitioning to different cities was not, as bad, but the main thing I was worried about was the Chicago weather. So that was just very terrifying, not gonna lie. It's been terrifying. The weather is and the wind is just it's brutal out here, but it's I'm slowly getting acclimated to it. So that one was just, getting used to the weather. Still getting used to the weather is a task. Um, Other than that, like, yes, my entire family is in Dallas, so it was an emotional kind of goodbye, sort of. But they visit, I visit, so it's all good. And it's just like a couple years, and eventually I plan on, going back to Dallas. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, and before we leave the subject of family, I will share with everyone that Nida is, I believe, the only one on our panel that has the wonderful experience of being married in law school. She was a newlywed going into law school. Do you find it difficult to attend law school with a spouse that, needs you, misses you? Because we will have people that are going to law school that have, husbands, wives, children. How do we balance that?
Yeah, so I would say it's absolutely not difficult. It's actually the opposite for me. It's been really helpful and wonderful so far. The thing is, uh, he's in law school too, so we're both like busy with our schedules, and that's the kind of thing that we kind of want to and try to balance. Just spending time together and scheduling naps together. So that's what we do. We're old couple, like it just feels like it. So we really schedule our naps. And other than that, like so he's a 2-0 now, I'm a 1-0. I really learned from his mistakes and his all the successes that everything that he did right and wrong, really. So that was really, really helpful for me. I had like a little, it was just like overall like really helpful to see the person going through this whole first year of law school, and I'm just doing that. So what worked out for him, okay, I'm gonna try to do that. What didn't work out for him, okay, I'm gonna try to do better. That's the kind of thing. So it's been really wonderful. I can't complain.
Excellent. Well, and you kind of bring up a great point that I'm so glad that you brought up, which is the notion that as a 1L, it's incredibly beneficial to utilize your resources. And you don't necessarily have to be married to a 2L to utilize a 2L's experience. If and you'll have to tell me, does your law school have a mentor program that connects 1Ls with upperclassmen or no?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. My law school does, and my mentor, she's been wonderful. She is a trio that I got paired up with. Other than that, like Loyola seniors at Loyola, they've been so incredibly helpful. Like the outlines, this the most helpful. But other than that, like just learning from like what they did right, because it's particular to Loyola, right? It's their experience, and I'm essentially going to be, taking what classes worked out for them, what professors they recommend, stuff like that. So definitely, if you have like a mentorship program at law school, definitely I would recommend participating in that. And speaking of mentorship, actually, I kind of want to give a shout out to the AT&T mentorship that you do. It worked out great for me. I still have my mentor. He
Oh,
still,
good.
yeah, he still helps me out. We have like a wonderful, cordial relationship where he helps me out. I kind of like email like what's going on with me, what I need help with, what I need advice with, and he's just always been so wonderful. So yeah, I definitely recommend participating in the AT&T mentorship too.
Excellent. Thank you for the shout out. We always love those. Yeah, I definitely can endorse utilizing mentor programs before law school, in law school, after law school. There are going to be, well, I don't want to spoil it, but there are opportunities for mentorship all over the place. So now I want to kind of get specific with you, Nida, and I think while law school is not always as scary as perhaps some people make it out to be, there are shocking moments, like moments where we're like, whoa, Dorothy is not in Neverland. Wait, no, I just crossed. That was a horrible.
That was, yeah.
Y'all know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Kansas, yeah. Dorothy isn't in Kansas anymore. So what was that moment for you? What was that eye-opening, oh my gosh moment for you?
Oh my gosh moment. That's a hard one, because I kind of like, I don't know, I just prepared for the worst. So I'm like, oh, this is just gonna be like downhill from here, so it wasn't as like eye-opening of a moment in law school. Like, I would say final exams though, just managing the time was like, oh, okay, this is real. And that was kind of a bit, I wouldn't say terrifying, but definitely a challenge. Like, you really have to be good at time management to do those final exams. God. Anyway, so yeah, I would say that. But other than that, it wasn't really a big, there was no big shock that, I felt.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing.
I hope so, because I don't know if I'm doing it right.
No, I'm telling you, that's a great thing. A lot of times we do have those moments that we hear back from, one else. It's like, oh my gosh, that first time you get cold called in class.
No, I mean, like I said, I prepared for the worst. So I was like, okay, the worst thing is gonna happen is I'm not gonna know, a question that he's gonna ask me, like my professor, and it's okay. It's okay if you don't know. Like, everybody has those moments, and it just passes.
Yes.
Just
Well,
don't
good.
dwell on it. So yeah, I just prepared for the worst. I'm an anxious person, and that really helps.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I have general questions that I want to ask you, but I also want to ask them to the other ladies. So I'm going to hold off on that question. But my last question to you will be, is there any advice that you will give the senior students, ladies, whomever that are, looking at this moment in time, February or spring semester of their senior year, and just kind of wondering what's coming down the pipeline for me? What should I do? What advice would you give him or her?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that around this time of the cycle, they've probably already applied, but if not, then definitely apply to law schools if you're trying to go the next cycle. But other than that, if you're like a junior, apply early, like in October. I applied October, but if it's earlier than that, like September, apply early. That just worked out great for me. The seniors who have applied already, I would say that the thing that helps is being getting your resume prepared. So essentially, like, right after 1L, you're after finals, you're going to apply to internships and whatnot. And I, like, before law school started, I have my resume ready, because there's not much that you can change in this one semester, and that's what I did. That worked out great for me, because I didn't have to make much, like, substantial changes to my resume. So that helps, even like a little bit. um, I would recommend getting your resume ready. and just doing a lot of reading, just any sort of reading, getting used to that, um, you know, time when you're just like really just looking at the computer and just reading, you gotta get used to it. I do have audiobooks, so not only am I looking at it because I'm so distracted all the time, but like looking at it, but also listening to the book is just helpful for me. So I would recommend, if you're trying to get used to audiobooks, that works out best for me. Other than that, like I don't have I can't think of well, yeah, prioritize and organize your tasks, really. That I would recommend doing. See what is the most important thing that's on your list and just tackling that one step at a time. But yeah, so applying early and audiobooks, I guess yeah, that was it.
Okay. No, I think that's fantastic advice,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And if I can insert my own story, I think the most shocking part was the reading. And I'll
Mm,
be honest with you, I didn't know how to study. I was one of those students that I didn't have to, okay, it sounds like a brag, but I didn't really have to study to get the grade. I just didn't. And so
mm,
then going to law school, there is no no, you have to study and you have to figure that out, and you have to figure it out very quickly.
yeah.
So I love the advice of, get used to reading, get used to that reading. And I, like you, Nita, utilized audiobooks because I had a nice long commute between campus and my apartment. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
I
really
used
helps.
every minute.
Yeah, every minute counts.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. Okay,
thank you.
obviously, don't go anywhere. We now are going to hear from our 2L, Miss Esther Oni. And as I mentioned, she put together a video package for us. So we're going to watch it and enjoy it together. It's not very long, but we're going to hear it now. And I'm going to ask you to just share with me whether or not you all, so if for whatever reason it starts playing and you guys can't hear it, just kind of, say, hey, we hear nothing. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get it started.
Hello, everyone. It truly is an honor to be a panelist at this virtual law student panel, Ladies Tell All. My name is Esther Oni. I will be sharing with you some nuggets on thriving as a 2L. Ms. White has shared a few guiding questions, a few guiding prompts with me, so I'll go through them and then in the end, share my favorite one with you. Number one, life and law school work as a 2L that is unique to being a 2L. As a 2L, you have competing priorities with life and with schoolwork. The life part comes in through internships, because as a 2L, you're participating in on-campus interviews, you're trying to secure an internship, either an internship that you'll do throughout your academic year or an internship you postpone and defer to your 2L summer. Either way, you're trying to secure a paid internship. You're trying to secure an employment opportunity your 2L year. And working through employment application packet is not something that takes 5 minutes to do. Not at all. You have to secure time to write the essay, you have to read the prompt, you have to research about this potential employer, and there's not just one. You have to do 2, 3 times over, and it takes time. Those time that you're using to prepare for this application, to prepare these application packets, are times you are not using to study. And above all else, you are in law school. So you must study the law so that you can thrive in this law school. So the time you're using to spend on trying to find a job is time you're not spending on the schoolwork, and you have to learn to balance that. So that's why I think as a 2L especially, you are navigating balancing work, and you might even be in a organization on campus and may even hold leadership positions in organizations that you are in on campus. So you're looking for a job, you're balancing your involvement in on-campus organizations, and you have schoolwork. So just navigating schoolwork and life becomes an intricate balance that you have to make sure, above all else, your schoolwork triumphs and leads so that your grades do not drop. Number two, benefits of SSCL programs. So at my school, there is a thing called Langdale. Langdale is a peer group tutoring opportunity. So a student tutors a group of like you and your classmates in this subject. So for example, let's take evidence. A Langdale for evidence will be someone who scored the highest grade in this subject area, who also took your professor, and throughout among all the students that were in their class, they were the one who scored the highest grade. So this person is your tutor for this professor and for this class. So you truly are getting the benefit of the bargain because you're getting the subject taught from your professor from the prior week, and then at the end of the week, you are getting tips and tricks of how to be successful in this professor's class on this professor's exam. Because law school exams, of course, are geared toward what does your professor want on the exam. And that's what you start practicing from day one, so that on exam day, it's just habit. My school offers that Langdale program. Is something I took advantage of religiously, especially in my first semester, went out and it truly reflected in my grades, which were great. Number three, challenges as a minority, as a female student. My challenge would be dressing up for interviews and which version of myself I present to potential employers. Now, that's not to say I'm coming in with the alter false version of myself. It's just that the legal industry is a close-knit niche, and within that close-knit niche, for only 4 to 5% are African American attorneys. And so statistically speaking, my interviewer, my potential employer, is a Caucasian person. And as a minority person, code switching is a reality. Living in dual realities is also a reality. So when I go to interviews, I'm always conscious and thinking about, how am I dressing to this interview today? How am I wearing my hair? What type of blazer am I wearing? What type of shirt am I wearing? So that I'm not perceived as either being provocative or being unprofessional. Now, this is not to say that every employer, every potential employer or interviewer views me in this light, but I don't want to convey that or give any opportunity for that to be conveyed of my person in this space. So I'm always thinking of how I'm presenting myself, and it's a lot of mental work, and it's a lot of anxiety on top of the whole interview process. However, with each time I do an interview, with each time I do a networking event, it gets better because you start learning, okay, I need to maybe save this information to the last, or you learn a lot basically by doing and participating in these potential employment opportunities that you're presented with. Now, this is not to say that when an African American potential employer attorney interviews me, their expectation is lower. No, it's not. They're still holding me to a high standard, which they should, as expected. However, the difference is that they understand my experience and my whole personhood because of that shared reality of being a person of color, of being among that 4 to 5% unicorn ratio of being an African American attorney in this industry and trying to represent and trying to make it. So the shared experience makes it less of an anxiety-provoking experience or interaction, but that doesn't mean I'm subjected to a lower or graded or judged on a lower standard. No, it's still law school, it's still a legal profession, it's still intense. Last, choosing your law school, why you chose it, and tips for admission. So I graduated from UTA in 2016, and throughout my time at UTA, I met and interacted and worked with people who are culturally diverse, ethnically diverse, intellectually diverse, just diverse in all aspects of life that are important or that are important to me. Now, for my graduate experience, I wanted a similar environment in which to pursue my legal education for me, that would be one less thing I had to worry about, because law school is already intense. I don't want to be in an environment where I don't feel comfortable at all. That was just not an option for me. Now, South Houston in and of itself is a very diverse city. My school strives to admit students who have diverse experiences in race, ethnicity, culturally, age-wise, all of the things that I also experienced at UTA, I see reflected at the school now. Is it perfect? No. But the thing is, I see people who look like me among the student body. I see people who look like me leading, being the editor-in-chief and of the law review at the school, which is the school's flagship newspaper, journal. I see people who look like me leading leading organizations, and I also see people who look like me on the faculty board as well. These reflections, this mirroring helps me survive on those days where imposter syndrome seemed to want to get the better of me. Seeing people who look like me walk in those halls, going from class A to class B, seeing people standing in front of me and teaching me the subject that I'm just not really getting right now, but I will get, helps me move through those days where things are a little more difficult than the previous. So that's why I chose the school, and I've enjoyed my experience thus far at the school. Now, my last tip, which is, in my opinion, the most important one, is you need to learn to balance your time. You have to be disciplined. Being disciplined is a skill that you have to learn if you don't already have it. I didn't have it. I'm still learning it, full transparency. But one thing I found that has truly helped me to get better with managing my time is this study strategy called the Pomodoro method. The Pomodoro method is a study strategy where you focus on one task for a series of time uninterrupted, and then you take a break and do whatever. So typically it goes 30 minutes uninterrupted, 5-minute, 10-minute break, 30-minute second rep, 10-minute break, third rep, 30-minute, and then a longer break, so 15 to 20-minute break. My attention span does not last that long. So for me, it goes 15 minutes, 5-minute break, 15 minutes, 5-minute break, 15 minutes, 5-minute, 5 to 10-minute break. On days where I can't go 15 minutes, I do 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and then I take a break. Sorry, that was my timer. And then I take a break. So this really helps me throughout the semester. I'm doing all of this so that by exam time, when everyone on campus is so anxious, I'm less anxious because I'm going to continue to practice studying the way I have been studying from day one with my Pomodoro method, so I can stay on track. And especially during exam times, those 5-minute break, I seriously take a nap. Cat naps are great, and they help me refocus, they help me rebalance, and they help me rejuvenate for the next rep that I am going to do. I hope that all of these have been very helpful and informative to you. Feel free to reach out to me at esther.oni, O as in orange, N as in Nancy, I as in indigo, at stcl.edu. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Can y'all hear me now? Oh, there we go. Y'all, I am living for the fact that both Esther and Nida, who don't know each other, did not compare notes, have now emphasized time management and rest, the importance of time management and rest. I'm telling you, those are huge. And quite honestly, those are, well, time management, I think I've spoken on, but the notion of taking that time to really rest and rejuvenate is so critical. And I can tell you, I personally took many a nap in my car before law school. So it's definitely something that I would encourage. So let me share this with you. Before we move to our third point, I would like to see if all of you ladies would like to chime in on this one point of identifying opportunities of diversity within your schools. How have each of you managed to handle, and I guess I'll give us the full view of everyone for now. How have you ladies been able to seek out opportunities for diversity, be it ethnic diversity, gender, whatever, social groups, something that is different and diverse with your school? How have you been able to find those opportunities? And we can, whomever would like to go first.
I could kind of speak to this because I think that, so I go to the University of Oklahoma College of Law, and it's candidly the whitest place I've ever been. And it's definitely, and I really mean that, it's not, I'm not just saying that. And it was definitely a culture shock to go from UT Arlington, which is so diverse, to mostly white people. And it seems like, to make a long story short, I'm on the Diversity and Inclusion and Equality Committee. And that consists of a group of people that are from like OWL, which is a women's organization. And we have like BALSA, which is the Black Law Student Organization. We have that for the Asian Americans, the Native Americans, because we're in Oklahoma. And I think I'm probably leaving. Oh, the Latin American. So we kind of call those the ALSAs. So it's been a real struggle, I think, for us in terms of our chief job is to go to the administration and kind of have a back and forth tug of war as to what they're going to be putting money into and what they're going to be endorsing. And it's been a huge adjustment. That's been my biggest adjustment here. And it's been really hard to seek out diversity, like true diversity. It seems like the administration does enjoy to maybe sometimes put their name on something that an organization has done and kind of call it their own diversity. But with all that aside, I would say the most important part is to find those groups and strengthen them and put your time and effort into them. Because I'm not sure how other colleges go, but at OU, that's something you absolutely have to seek out. You have to become ingrained in it, a part of it, and really commit a lot of time, to be honest with you, and willing to push against some of the administration and kind of what they want to do and stuff like that. So that's kind of been my experience with that.
Thank you. Nida or Eliza? Eliza. Great.
Yeah, so I can, yeah, for sure. I think, so Haley did a good job talking about how there's different affinity groups within every organization or every law. One second. Sorry. So Haley did a good job talking about how there are a lot of different affinity groups within every law school. And especially if you're a student of color or a first generation student, for example, or someone that identifies with a certain group or organization, being a part of those groups is really, really integral to your law school experience. And I think that finding people with similar shared experiences, finding people who can give you a different source of comfort and joy within your law school experience is really important. And not to say that these are the only places where you can find these people, but it does become a lot easier to talk about what you're struggling with, or finding spaces where you can feel really comfortable to be open about your emotions and, you know, talk about imposter syndrome, talk about feeling uncomfortable, talk about if something was said in class one day and how, you know, you want to react to that. Or if there was, for example, my first year of law school was the Kavanaugh hearings, and they were live streaming those in common spaces throughout the law school. And I think that affinity groups were really a good source for us to talk about how we were feeling about that, or just anything that happens within the law school, within the larger community. When COVID happened, when the Black Lives Matter protests were, you know, taking over the world, it seemed like at the time, but also when there was a large cultural, racial movement, those were spaces where I felt comfortable really voicing my opinions without feeling judged, without feeling like I had to please anybody else. And I think taking advantage of those organizations is really important, but also for mentorship, right? I think Nida talks about this. Finding mentors becomes really easy when you have smaller organizations that you can find, you know, people, upperclassmen in, that will give you outlines or just talk about, you know, which professors to take, which professors to avoid, how to deal with administration, how to deal with, or even just finding things on campus if it's a new environment that you're not used to, right? So even if it's not law school related, right? How to get to the grocery store if you don't have a car and you live in a small college town, whatever. So I think it's really important to find those spaces, and they exist at every university, every law school. Very common. And if they don't, then make it happen, right? Is what I would say.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that is a point that I'm probably going to bring up a little later, the make it happen part. So y'all don't let me forget about that part. Nida, did you have a comment?
I think I would just like re-emphasize, really, Haley and Eliza really talked about all of it. My answer is pretty much going to be no, because I haven't had the time moving classes and coming back home and doing the reading, in all honesty, to be involved in any sort of groups. I think I've set the time for that in my 2L year. I've had, I have been going to like a few, actually 1 or 2 meetings of those affinity groups. And my kind of thing is just talking to people, like just anybody. I love to talk, and I love to just like, get whatever insight I can get from different sorts of people. So I would just like talk, and eventually ended up, making friends, and from different backgrounds that you can learn so much about. That's just been my thing. In general, I just really haven't had the time to seek out, actually.
No, and that's perfectly understandable. And see, again, I love that, because that's another perspective. This is also possibly a learning opportunity for you. These are valuable resources and tools that are available, and definitely something that we do want to utilize. But I do want to give the floor now to our 3L, Miss Haley Moore, to kind of share what I call our light at the end of the tunnel segment. Just kind of finishing 3L year strong, and after we've had the experience that Nida described of going in and trying to relearn key skill sets that we once knew, and then having Esther's experience of really trying to do OCI, which is I believe she described on-campus interviewing, and getting those first jobs, and trying to break really into our careers now that we're settled into law school. Haley, share with us what it is to kind of now be on the opposite side. We're no longer moving into law school, we're moving further out.
It's something I just off the bat, something I thought I would look forward to, and I definitely do, but it's also kind of bittersweet in some ways, especially if you've built a lot of really close bonds, which if you've done law school even a little bit right, you probably have. A little bit of background, obviously I went to UT Arlington. I graduated in 2019. I was very active in the pre-law center and kind of on the competition teams and things of that nature. And I'm now here at OU College of Law. I would say the one thing I have done the worst job of my 3L year is overcommitting. And that's something I'll do my entire life. And I'll go in and I'll say, I'm not going to do it this time. But to me, so I have struggled with the rest portion of the time management. I can time manage, but I usually leave out the rest portion. I would say this semester is probably my calmest semester. But this year has also given me an opportunity to be really involved in organizations, specifically as leadership. So it's given me time to do things like go and bother the dean about, our DEIC, stuff like that, our diversity group. And so I'm the president of OWL, which is the Organization for the Advancement of Women in Law, which is our affinity group for women on campus. Well, not on campus, but within the law school. I'm also involved in the Military Law Society. I will say, I think I'm a good example of, I don't want to say on the complete other end of things academically. I'm an honor roll student, but just barely. So I think that I definitely didn't, I don't want to say go as hard, but I definitely didn't, grades were not kind of my biggest thing. Obviously I need to get decent grades, and to be able to do things. However, I knew that I wasn't wanting to do big law or something of that nature. I always knew I was going to do government work. So usually the government doesn't require as high of grades as like big law firms do. So I've kind of always maybe not been as invested as I should have in academics. But that's just kind of that's what I value. It's all about prioritizing things. So I think now in my 3L year, I've really been able to put academics on the back burner. Not to say that it's not still important. It's just you're quite frankly in easier classes your 3L year if you've done anything right. So it's kind of been good to not have as hard or challenging of classes. I'm also actually getting my international law certificate here at OU. So that's been something I've been able to round off. So now I'm taking classes I'm interested in. I'm taking things that, I have most of my requireds out of the way. There may be one more experiential credit I need to get in, but now is the time to kind of enjoy the law. And I know that sounds so stupid because it is high stress, but I'm enjoying the classes I'm taking. I'm learning about what I want to learn about. I'm not having to get evidence out of the way. I'm not having to get all of these other menu class requirements out of the way. So it's been, in terms of the law, the most enjoyable because I can pick what I want to do. And I've also been able to invest my time in things that really matter to me and I want to do. However, now that I'm in second semester, the job search and the bar are now very heavily looming. So, kind of going that you obviously need to finish and graduate. That's non-negotiable. And then you kind of are starting to get into the bar prep. I haven't started bar prep yet. I'm doing the summer program. So that's something that kind of you're revving up for. And in some states for bar applications, so I'm in Oklahoma, but I'll be going back. Oklahoma's on the UBE now, which is the Uniform Bar Exam. However, I'll still be going back to Texas to take the UBE there. Oklahoma has a very lengthy bar application process that starts in October of your 2L year. That's not something I was interested in at all. And I knew if I was and I knew I wasn't going to practice in Oklahoma. It would have to be a very enticing position for me to stay here. So for Oklahoma bar applications, it starts in October of your 2L year, and that it's because it's a 2-step application. I'm not incredibly sure about how it all works, but for Texas, you start in the earliest you can start is December of your 3L year. To start getting applications. Of course, you can be getting information together and things like that before that. But I started in December, January. It was due February 1st, so about 10 days ago. And then after that, you have to get fingerprinted. And that's kind of been my bar application experience. Honestly, it really wasn't that bad, except for your wallet. But in terms of actually getting information together and going through the application, it really wasn't that bad for me. I can't speak for others. And if you're in Oklahoma, I sure can't speak for you. So that's kind of, I'm just going through that and kind of getting ready for the bar and for everything to kind of be over.
So I was chuckling because yes, it's very much just get through it. I'm ready to be done now. So I do want to know, and you kind of touched on it, but how was your studying different now relative to when you first started law school?
I would say when I first started law school, well, when in your 1L year, obviously from your first semester to your second semester, you're going to learn some new study techniques, hopefully learn what works for you, what doesn't. Kind of as going forward though, it's kind of, I know it works for me and I'm not going to do a whole lot of extra for sure. I definitely know first thing to do, I need to find outlines before I start, like before this semester even starts. Yeah. Which can be harder your 3L year, especially if you're doing some specialty classes like international law. There's not exactly a bank of international law outlines. So that can be a little bit more difficult. I've also learned that in those more niche classes, it's good to kind of have a group together and that maybe you make the outline together. I'm very much so a group learner in that sense, kind of teaching it to ourselves. But I would say for the most part, my studying has evolved where I do it in a group versus by myself because I feel like it's more efficient for me. And that's the key word, is very efficient. I'm not focused on getting the most knowledge possible in my head, especially on these non-bar tested classes. I'm much more concerned about the efficiency of it, making sure I know it, but also, they call it 3 LOL year. And that's definitely kicking in second semester.
I've never heard of this 3 LOL, but that's funny. No, so I will say when you get to bar exam prep, which we'll leave for Eliza, it does become how much you can just
Yeah.
pack in your head without exploding. But you mentioned the international law certificate. Talk to me a little bit about what drove your decision-making process, and when in the law school process would a person decide, okay, you know what, I think I want to do a certificate, or now I've started and maybe I want to apply for a dual degree program. What drives that decision making?
So I think it all goes back to your background and how you even came to law school. I've always been very international in the terms that I lived abroad when I was younger as an expat for work and stuff, and kind of just continued that moving forward. So it's always something I knew I wanted to do, is kind of go back abroad and be international. So the decision is a very personal one, and no one can make that decision for you. So a dual degree versus a certificate, usually there's going to be a little bit different timing with that. A dual degree, you need to know pretty early on that you're wanting to do that. And I would suggest you think long and hard if you think you want to do one, because I bet you don't want to. It's a lot more work once you actually get into it and start looking at what it entails and things like that. You're more than full-time, and for like 4 straight years for most things. The combo JD MD one, you're crazy. I don't know why someone would. If it's for you, it's for you. But that's too much work, getting a medical degree and a legal degree at once. But a really common one, and I think one if you're wanting to open up your own law firm, is the MBA one. And that's something that's not as, to me, unattainable as a JD MD combination. It's something that can be a lot of benefit to you, especially depending on what you want to do. That one you probably need to know, again, probably by the end of your first semester, halfway through your second semester. The certificates are just a function of, and I'm assuming it's like this at other schools, of what's being offered. So if all of these classes were offered your 3L year, and it somehow worked out magically that you could take all these classes your 3L year, your first semester and second, technically you wouldn't have to decide until the very end, but it just doesn't work like that. Also, sometimes you have foundational classes you need to take before some of the advanced ones. So like for international law, you have to take international law foundations before you take almost any other international law class. In our international law program, things are only offered every so often. So you really need to know pretty early on if you're wanting to do a certificate like that. I can't speak for the other certificates. We do offer several. You may be able to wait longer on that. But I knew I wanted to do it. And then kind of moving in, it seemed pretty realistic that I could just almost accidentally do it, because I was interested in taking these classes anyways. So I was like, why not get a certificate out of it? It may have changed around a few of the classes I was taking. I will say one of the requirements for the international law certificate, you either had to attend 10 lectures and write a paper about it for the undergrad international studies program. However, they weren't having 10 that year because of COVID. So the other option is to go take an interdisciplinary class. So I last semester went and sat with a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds. Mrs. White's going to laugh at me because I'm not that much older than that. However, a bunch of freshmen taking French 1, because I had to take an interdisciplinary class to get my international law certificate because they weren't offering those 10 lectures. So it's kind of an anomaly, but it happened to be, COVID crazy. So I sat with a bunch of freshmen and took French 1 for 5 hours a week, because they only offer 5-hour increments. So I figured, why not take a language, because I'm interested in State Department stuff like that. So that was the only thing that I was like, I definitely wouldn't have done that. Definitely wouldn't have done that. Trying to get the certificate. But other than that, I think if you're interested in it, it should almost happen naturally.
Excellent. Well, okay. And so the last question that I have, it's kind of it's very specific to you, but actually is applicable to a few others that may get to see this. You are on the young side, and we've talked about this your entire career. Y'all, I'm positive she's not 21. I'm positive she's not 21 and about to graduate law school. So I guess for your final point, share with us how going through law school as a young law student has impacted your experience, and what advice would you give to somebody that is going to start law school as a younger person?
So I'm 22. Mrs. White
Uh-huh.
just missed a birthday. Um, but I would say it came with a lot of I'm not going to say negatives, but a lot of things to consider, as well as a lot of positives. I will say it feels pretty good to be like, I don't have to worry about graduating before I'm 26 because you're going to. And I say that because a lot of my friends are worried about they're still in school and they don't have a job yet. So that there's health insurance to realize, if you're off your parents. I will say my 1L year before I was 21 was probably the most difficult. For better or for worse, alcohol is a part of a lot of the events that you do, and a lot of we had Halloween and they were IDing to get in, so I couldn't go in and enjoy it with my classmates. But if you have good friends, they will do maybe a house party so you don't have to go out. But that was a big, I think, I don't want to say issue, but you aren't able to participate in a lot of things that are alcohol centered. And again, better or worse, a lot of events are alcohol centered. So that was kind of a negative. Another, again, I don't want to call them negatives, but I'll just call them negatives, but you know what I mean. Another semi-negative would probably be like a life experience thing. So a lot of when you're applying to these internships, things like that, unless you have something else that can set you apart, it's like, you're going to have a real good reason to have a 21-year-old sitting in front of me asking me to do the work. Why wouldn't I give this to someone that's had a job before and has real world experience? So it was difficult cramming a resume in the time period, because you don't just have the degree, you need to have the resume to kind of be hired. So that was kind of a difficult thing. And that's maybe why I overcommit, is to make sure I have enough going for me there. But a lot of positives where I have a lot of great relationships with people that are probably double my age. I think it's definitely an odd dynamic because on competition teams and stuff, when you're the captain, and that's kind of been my experience here is, why is this 50-year-old man going to listen to me? But I haven't had an issue yet, actually. The only times I have an issue is when there's people my own age, actually, weirdly enough. They seem to kind of have an issue with it. But that's another thing, is the age difference. I think Oklahoma has a really diverse age difference in terms of alternative students, and I'm not going to say older, but older than the average age. So that was kind of something to work around. But it also feels really good to know you're leaving so young and you have so much time ahead of you. I could still screw up a few times and still be right on track. And that's something that brings me some peace. Also, maybe that, I put in my 20 years and maybe even am able to retire, and, you're not even 50 yet. So it also brings me some peace, and it really, my opportunities are endless, and I'm allowed to mess up a few times because I have some buffer time built in there that maybe people graduating 10 years older than me may not have. So there's some positives and negatives, but I think if you go in there with the right attitude and the confidence, and don't bring up your age unless you have to, I think you'll be fine. They're going to make fun of you for it. I still get made fun of for it. And because it's just now that my graduating class is coming in as 1Ls, and I've gotten to see some this is off topic, but some UTA alumni are now, there's 4 of us at OU Law, and it's a really cool thing. It's myself, Honest, Julia, and Skylar Hill. I don't know that she was active in this, but so it's really cool to see people from UTA, because I was like, no way, there's not going to be anyone here. But so that's been something cool off topic.
Good deal. Well, I'm glad that it is, and you're right. There are some drawbacks to being underage, when you're in law school, but certainly some positives. And the program that she's referring to that allows you to retire is likely JAG. Going potentially going into JAG and being on the military side of things, that you only have to put in 20 years of service and then you can be out of there. Jealous. So yes, thank you so much for that. Stay put. We're going to listen to Eliza and her experience really quickly. Then we're going to bring everybody back and ask a few final questions for our overall experience.
So it's actually Eliza. Sorry, I didn't.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're totally fine.
So I'm now going to yield the floor to Eliza Sharania. who is our recent graduate. Her segment is going to be called "So You Finished, Now What?" And she's going to talk about her experience of life on the outside. So take it away, Eliza.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, so just like Amber said, I graduated from Cornell Law May of 2021. So I'm a recent grad. I went to the University of Texas at Austin for undergrad. So I'm still within the UT system to an extent, I guess. And yes, life outside of law school is very different. So I was a K through JD student, which meant that I didn't take any time off between undergrad and law school. So my entire personality up until now has been being a student, and it is no longer that. So it's definitely a different environment to be in, especially in a more virtual environment. But I think that it's worth it at the end of the day, and everyone is just pushing to get to the finish line. But even after you graduate, you're not completely there yet. So you still have to take the bar exam and then apply for admission to whatever state that you want to be admitted into. And so then you can officially practice. But yeah, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Oh, of course. So what I'd like to start off with is talking about bar prep, because we kind of touched on it a little bit with Haley, but she has no idea what's coming, no idea. So share with us a little bit about bar prep, what you chose to do, why you chose to do it, how did you survive that process?
Sure. So I actually did a specific program called the Pro Bono Scholars Program. It's a program in New York State that allows 3L law students to take the bar exam February of their 3L year, and then spend the last 12 weeks of their 3L, of their spring semester of 3L doing pro bono work at an organization of their choice. So I did bar prep December through February of my 3L year. And then I took the bar exam in February of 2021. And then I volunteered at the Dallas County Public Defender's Office for 12 weeks after, or for my last semester of law school, essentially. And I would very much recommend that if your school or your state offers a program like that, to really take advantage of it, because
yes. Oh my goodness.
There's a lot of great things, but the best one for me was graduating and then not having to worry about anything. So I had a free summer, essentially. I didn't have to worry about bar prep during the summer, but also there's like the, if you fail, which, you won't, but if you fail, you have the opportunity to take it again in the summer, right? And those are the two big appealing things for me. That I also was really interested in pro bono work. So sorry, I don't think I mentioned this, but I'm currently volunteering at the same office right now at the Dallas County Public Defender's Office, but I'm doing felony court. And I'll be starting at Latham & Watkins, which is a big law firm. And I'll be in the New York office because I'm licensed in New York in a couple of weeks. So
nice.
That is sort of what I'm looking at the moment. And even though I knew I wanted to do big law going into law school, I really am passionate about public defense work. I think it's really important, but this gave me the opportunity to do that kind of work during law school. So I would really recommend anyone who's remotely interested to look into seeing if their school or state offers a program like this. But in terms of bar prep specifics, there are companies that offer bar prep courses, and I would very much recommend doing a bar prep class with the big ones are Themis and Barbary and Kaplan. So usually if you're going to a big law firm after graduation, your law firm actually pays for your bar prep class, which is great because they're quite expensive. I paid around $1,400 for my bar prep class, but they offer discounts for public interest students, and sometimes law schools will also do a match program. So for example, if you're doing Themis, if you have a friend that's doing big law, for example, and their firm is paying for their bar prep class, you can partner with them, and Themis will also give you a free bar prep class with that student. So there's a lot of opportunities available to students who are not doing big law and who are in the public interest field to get, bar prep class at a more affordable rate. But it is it was definitely the thing that allowed me to feel comfortable taking the bar, but also, you know, I passed, which is great on my first try, but I didn't take a lot of those classes in law school. Like I never took evidence in law school. I'm doing transactional work. I'll be doing M&A work. Post law school, I never took evidence. And I learned it all within the 14-week period of the bar prep class. I never took evidence. I never took a couple of the other classes like real estate, wills and trusts, estates. I didn't know any of that prior to studying for it for the bar.
UCC, all that. Ugh.
Right, UCC, all of that. And so you sort of become like a mini expert in certain, you know, subjects of bar prep, and obviously taking those classes in law school is definitely helpful. Like for example, criminal procedure was a class that I really enjoyed in law school, and it does come up on the bar exam. And that portion of bar prep was very easy for me because I was like, I know this, I know that, right? Business organizations, I took it in law school. I didn't really pay attention that much. I mean, it was a class I took as a 2L, and I was reminded of certain things while I was studying for the bar. So it wasn't like super easy, but it wasn't like very difficult because I already was exposed to it to a certain extent. But yes, most bar prep classes are about 14 weeks leading up to the bar exam itself. The bar exam is a 2-day exam that, and you know, most states have adopted the UBE, Texas now being one of them, New York being one of them. So I took the UBE based out of New York, but because it was COVID, I was back home in Texas, and it was a remote bar exam, which I really enjoyed. I think that if you have the opportunity to take a remote bar exam, please do it, because I was in a hotel room by myself, not around any other law students that were nervous and anxious. They give you breaks, so it's like a 90-minute, you know, exam, then you get a 30-minute break, 90-minute exam, then you get a 90-minute lunch break, 90-minute exam, 30-minute break, 90-minute exam. And I think those breaks allow you to decompress, but especially if you're by yourself, it makes it so much easier. I was really scared about technical stuff going wrong, like my files not uploading or my computer shutting down in the middle of it and all that stuff, but they worked really hard to make sure that, you know, that didn't happen. So I would say that was the more nerve-wracking part, rather than, I mean, of course, also the information and whether or not you would retain it. But also the bar prep classes allow you to understand how the bar works. If you were a first generation law student like me, I had no idea what the bar was, right? When people were like, oh, it's the ME and the MD, and I was like, what are these words? Like, what are these acronyms, right? Like, I need you to tell me what I'm doing right now and how I'm supposed to learn it. So it's broken up into different segments, and I don't want to bore you all with the details, but you know, you'll learn through the bar prep classes how to study for each segment of it, and like which subjects are tested on certain things. Like for example, there are subjects that are tested on the essay portion that are not tested on the multiple choice portion, right? Or there are subjects that are tested on both. So you want to know which ones to focus on a little bit more during your prep. Things like that are very, very helpful. But yeah, that was my bar prep experience. I did it in the winter. It was great because I didn't really feel like I was missing out on anything. I didn't see friends on vacation, posting pictures in beaches, right? I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna hunker down in the winter and study for it, and it worked out.
Well, again, y'all have just made me entirely jealous. This whole thing is just making Mrs. White jealous. I will never know what it means to not sit in a room with 1,000 other people that are vomiting in their seats and crying and cringing and having the shakes and all this stuff. So I'm definitely envious of the private hotel martini experience. I would have loved that.
It was still very nerve-wracking, I will say.
Well, yes,
not as much.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
I'll take that. And then 2 days, and Eliza, you took the New York. I don't know how long the New York was before it went to the UBE. Texas was 3 days of just hair falling out and crying and all that stuff. So yeah, hot mess. So I'd like to kind of shift gears now and talk a little bit. And first, let me say congratulations twofold, because you not only passed the bar on your first attempt, but you also have a fabulous job that you're about to go to. So share with us what your experience was like landing that first job right out of law school.
Yeah, so I was very grateful to go to a school that prioritizes career development, I guess, or just like pushes students into the right place for them. And Cornell is notorious for being a big law school. And that was definitely something I was looking for during the application cycle, right? So even when I was deciding what law school I wanted to go to, my three big things that I really cared about were, one, what's the employment rate post-grad looking like? And Cornell has like a 98.7%, something like that, employment rate. And the people that aren't employed actually end up going to more school or are doing like JD joint programs. So basically everyone is employed regardless of where you are GPA wise, right? Which was very comforting for me. The second thing was the location of employment. So I grew up in the DFW area. I went to Austin for undergrad and I really wanted to move to New York City because I was like, I want to practice law in New York City. It was very glamorized for me growing up. And I was like, I want to be a New York City big law attorney. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I was like, okay, how am I going to get there? And Cornell funnels a lot of its students into New York City. That's where they have a lot of alumni, but it's mostly like New York City, Boston, DC are like the three big regions. And then they also have like California, Texas, Chicago. So I knew that like if I went there, I could always come back if I wanted to. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the risk and go there. And the third thing was financial. So I was like, does this fit into what I can afford essentially for law school? And they give out very generous scholarships, which was really beneficial for me. So ultimately checked the three main boxes that I had. And then in terms of getting the job, so your first year of law school is a little bit different compared to your second year. And I'm sure, we've talked about that on the panel in terms of the job search. I was lucky enough to land a 1L firm summer associate position after my first year of law school. And that was actually in Texas. So I was at Vincent and Elkins in Dallas, which is a wonderful, wonderful law firm. I really enjoyed everyone that I met there, but I did a special program with them. I got the public interest fellowship, which allowed me to spend 6 weeks at the firm in Dallas. And then I spent 6 weeks at a nonprofit in New York City called Sanctuary for Families that does a lot of work for women and domestic violence survivors, but also the specific intersection of domestic violence and immigration, which is something that I was really interested in. So I spent 6 weeks in New York City, which was paid for by the firm. So they paid me salary and they gave me a really nice bonus. And it was awesome, right? Because I got to experience what it was like working in the public interest field and whether or not that was right for me at the time. I realized that I do want to do firm work. And so my second year of law school, I used that experience to sort of, decide what I wanted to do, but also what firms I wanted to go to. And I wanted to go to a firm in New York City. And the great thing about Cornell is all of our interviews happened the summer after our 1 year or after our first year of law school. So it was like my first year of law school ended in May. I started my internship, like my summer internship from May, and then I finished that in July. And then mid-July to August, I was interviewing. So there's like no break. Like you're just on the grind 24/7. And I actually did early interviews. So while I was in New York City, doing the pro bono work at Sanctuary for Families, I was also doing interviews at other law firms for my 2L summer position. So it was a full year in advance, which can be really intimidating for a lot of people who are like, you hear your first year is the most important. That's where your grades are really important. And it's because of this, right? Because you tend to interview earlier at these firms. So I actually had my firm position locked and loaded September of my 2L year. Like I knew where I was going. And the return offer rate for these, like most people who go get a return, especially if you're at a big law firm, it changes from firm to firm. Sometimes like if you're at a mid law firm or a small boutique firm, then you might not have a same return offer rate, but most big city law firms, the return rate is 100 unless you really mess up, like unless you do something crazy, which usually doesn't happen. You get a return. So I got an offer with, I actually had quite a few offers, and Latham was the best firm for me. And I was really excited to join them. And then I interned, and then I did my summer associate. It was actually virtual because of COVID after my 2L year. And then I'll be joining them after 3L. So that's sort of how it worked for me. I know that that's not everybody's experience. It's also not everybody's experience if you're more into public interest. A lot of my friends that were doing that, you know, they did different internships, and then were applying for like fellowships or et cetera, like during their 3L year. Lucky for me, I didn't have to worry about getting a job essentially throughout my entire 2L and 3L year, which really takes the pressure off, I think, in terms of, you know, your academic environment, if that makes sense. It makes things feel less important, even though you're there to learn and you're there to, you know, do well. It's like, okay, this grade is not going to determine whether or not I have a job after I graduate, which is really
Yeah.
nice. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, that is kind of a great way to encourage people to strategize. You know, basically the earlier that you can lock that job in, and you know, I do emphasize with the students all the time, and I don't think we've gotten a chance to say it here, but your 1L grades are kind of, well, Nida, cover your ears. I don't want to do this to you, but your 1L grades kind of define, you know, a lot of the opportunities that are available for you. And so, you know, I think that this is a perfect example of how, you know, if you can knock it out of the park that 1L year,
So
you set yourself up for a 2L summer opportunity and then
yeah,
beyond.
and I think so. I know everyone says grades matter the most, and I won't say that that's false. But I will say one thing: connections matter more sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a hard thing to hear if you don't know anybody. If you're entering this field without knowing anyone in it, without having like, oh yeah, my dad's a partner at this firm, or my mom's a judge here, you know, like you'll encounter people like that in law school all the time and sort of feel like you're out of place. But the thing is, you have 3 years to really go out there and make those connections, because that comes in really handy when you're looking for a job, or when you're looking for a mentor, or when you're looking for just to talk to someone about their experience to decide if that's something that you want to do, right? So because there's just so much out there that you may not know about, and you won't learn until you meet all of these people who share their experiences with you and then will help you get to where you need to be. Because sometimes that's just the word of someone important at a law firm might, you know, be a little bit more important than like, oh, you getting a B in evidence, right?
Yeah,
like
being the
nobody's
tipping
really
point.
going to care about it at the end of the day, which is a good thing.
Excellent point. Well, yeah. And you know, it's you're absolutely you're absolutely right. If you can make those connections, so yes, and that's an excellent point. The networking sometimes can matter even more than the grades, and so building those connections and establishing those connections is really paramount to success. Well, so really quickly, I want to make sure you guys' time is respected. Are you guys still good on time for a few more minutes? Okay, great. So I have quick questions that we're going to go rapid fire, like 15 seconds to each of you, and see if we can knock out all these questions before we adjourn. So I think I heard from, oh no, actually, I think it was Esther's that talked about the first gen experience. So really quick, 15 seconds. What has been your first gen law student experience for each of you? And we'll start in reverse and go Eliza, then Haley, then Nida.
I think as a first generation student, I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and battling that was really important to me. But finding people that remind you that you belong here, and that this place is also for you, makes that feel a lot better. But also just to see that you're succeeding, right? You're doing great. Like you are where you need to be. You're getting things done, and you belong in that environment.
I love it. Haley.
So I'm a first in law student, but I think it's kind of a misnomer because both of my parents did go to higher education after their undergraduate degree. So yes, it's difficult in terms of connections and things like that. But because I had that foundation from both of my parents, I was kind of able to walk in there pretty confidently, maybe falsely so, and start to get to know people and start forming connections pretty easily. Because it is hard to hear, oh, my parents are judge, this is why that. But there's some people that don't use it to their advantage, and more props to them. But yeah, I think it's just about going in there confident enough. It's like, pro tip, a bunch of are probably a little bit of idiots, and if they can do it, you can do it. So, you know, candidly, they are. If they're able to somehow waltz into graduation, so are you. So really don't, I would just say don't feel intimidated by it. I mean, once you start to talk to them, that facade of being not first gen will go away really quickly.
Great point. Thank you. Nita?
I agree with Haley. It was kind of like intimidating. We had a Facebook like group going on before we started law school, and I would see like people from NYU or University of Michigan, all like my classmates are from these great big law schools. I'm sorry, just undergrad coming into law school. It was kind of intimidating, but you get to talk to people, and it's a whole different experience. And don't let it get to you, and focus on what you want to do. You're here, you worked hard, so many years to get to law school, and just focus on your experience, and it should be good.
Good deal. Awesome. 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 Well, okay. So really quickly, I know everybody has a struggle moment. None of you can sit here and say, I struggled. Never. It didn't happen. So when that moment hit during law school, when you had your struggle moment, wherever you were, whatever you were doing, what did you do to get through it? And what's the tip that you would give to somebody else who gets into a similar situation? Starting with Nita, Haley, Aliza.
I would relying on family has been my kind of stress reliever sort of thing. I would just talk to my family. I would talk to Greg, and that would just be a good stress reliever. Also, like just focusing on physical health too. Like first semester I neglected it too much, like way too much. So second semester, like I'm trying to like get back on it. So just having that outlet of family, and just focusing on working out or whatever, that helped me out.
Good. Very true. Yes. Haley, what do
So
you
I think
do?
a big struggle point was obviously it was the second semester of my 1L year is when everything with COVID started. So from then on, it was kind of COVID. And I know Nita may be talking about more working out, but I actually suffered like you actually get sick from not taking care of yourself. And the stress compounding with the fact that I kept getting really sick was it was kind of an awful experience, and it just kept compounding on itself. I know this isn't feasible for everyone, but I live with 3 other female law students, and we live right next to the law school, and having that sense of community and knowing that there are 3 other female law students right next door, and they're also my best friends, but I don't just live with them, but we're really close. That I think is what got me through it. And I know that not everyone can live with 3 other law students, but I would say the community, especially if you're not near family.
Yes. Yes. Good point. Thank you. Aliza.
So I'm going to talk about like a particular moment, I guess. So my first year, we have memos that you work on in your legal research and writing class, and everyone hates the memos. You have to blue book, you have to do citations, you have to do legal research, and it's just draining. Okay. And this is our final memo for that semester. And it was also around the time when like people were studying for finals and everyone's outlining. So you have to work on your memo, you have to outline, and you have to read for class. And it's just like all of those things felt like they were piling up. And I was the type of student that like loved having weekends to myself, or most weekends to myself. So I would be at the law school from 6 a.m. to midnight every day. Monday through Friday. And I remember it was like midnight on a Thursday, and I was in the Carroll's working on my memo. It was due like in 2 days, and I was struggling. Like I hadn't done any of the readings for the next day. I had done no outlining. I was just on the memo. I was down a rabbit hole on Westlaw, and I was crying. I was crying at the Carroll's, and it was just like the worst experience of my life. And my friend was sitting 2 Carroll's down from me, and she like heard a little sniffle, and she was like, Lisa, are you crying right now? And I was like, yes, like I'm just so overwhelmed. Like, and then she started crying. So we're both sitting in the library crying. And it was just, we were like, okay, you know what? There's nothing more we can do right now. We're just gonna go home, and we'll come back in the morning and we'll do it again. And I think that was the moment that I realized that it never ends. Like you just always have something to do.
Yes.
And you're just gonna have to do it. Like you can't make excuses. You can't sit there and hate everything. I mean, you can, I did all the time. I sat there and I hated everything. But one thing that was really great was just that I had people around me that were going through the exact same thing, that knew how I felt, that were also overwhelmed. I had upperclassmen that had already gone through those things. And I could see that, you know, at the end of the day, it's fine. Everything's fine. But we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially if you're someone that grew up like you, Amber, that didn't really have to study that much and could just, you know, things were a breeze or things came easily to you. In law school, you never know how you're doing because there's no grade, right? There's no midterm, there's no quiz. It's just one exam at the end of the semester. And it's like, do you know it or do you not? And throughout the whole process, you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I know it or not. And there's no way that you can guarantee that, right? So it's living with the uncertainty and living with that level of uncomfort. But knowing that, you know, you're just gonna have to wake up and you're just gonna have to do it. You're just gonna have to outline or go through the rabbit hole in Westlaw or, you know, do your Blue Book citations and just spend the time doing it, because at the end of it, it's gonna get done and you're gonna do fine. It's gonna be okay. But I think having to remind yourself of that became very challenging at one point. But I do remember that moment very vividly because I was like, oh my God, I'm just so overwhelmed. But just having a good support system. I mean, Haley, like you said, if you're doing law school right in any way, you're making friends, right? You have a level of support system, as long as you're not that kid that, you know, steals outlines or doesn't share or is like really bitter towards everyone, right? You're a good person and hopefully you meet other people that are also good people, and you're just getting through it together. So.
I love it. I feel okay. Well, I did have one last question, but I feel like you guys kind of gave me what I wanted. I'll ask it anyway. So in 3 words, sum up one good tip for our viewers to survive law school. What are the 3 words you'd give them to survive law school? We'll start with Haley, and then we'll go to Eliza, and then we'll end with Nida.
Okay, no way I'm doing 3 words. So what I'm going to say is, all I'm going to say is that not everyone goes down the same path, and you cannot be constantly stressed out that you're not doing the exact same thing as someone else. For me, OCIs are not the end of the world. I didn't do any OCIs my first or my summer after my 1L year. So just to say that not everyone's on the same path, not everyone's going to get there the same way, shape, or form. And so you need to be stressed and focused on yourself, but don't stress about your path matching someone else's. It's going to look different and you want it to look different.
I'll take that, Haley. Rule breaker. I'll take that. Eliza, what do you have?
You will succeed. And I think that success looks different for everybody. And it's not about comparing your timeline to anyone else's, but at the end of the day, you're going to succeed. If you put in the work, if you put in the time and the effort and the energy, you're fine. So don't stress too much about the outcome.
Excellent. Nida?
Yeah, I thought I would get 3 words, but I don't. But yeah, my advice is just like, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. Like whatever worked out great for you for your studying habits in undergrad, you know, those are the positive studying habits that you might use in law school too. You just don't have to like do everything. Don't jump on the bandwagon, you know, just doing something that another person's doing or a few of your classmates are doing. Don't do that. Do what works for you. So that'd be all.
I like that. All right, ladies, you guys, I appreciate you so much. I think I held you for even longer than you agreed to be here. I'm so blessed that you guys gave of your time today. I love you and thank you and appreciate you guys. Truly, if you would like to share your contact information, I will make sure that it is available for people that want to reach out to you and have questions. I'm sure it's going to come up. Somebody wants to connect. But if that is something that you're comfortable with, we can absolutely do that. And with that, I'm going to end our recording and you can say goodbye and then we may have our post conversation. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. And thank you for anyone that is listening. If you have more questions or want to connect with these ladies, you can reach out to us at prelaw@uta.edu and we'll get you linked up with them. Thanks so much.